Now we can also connect via SSH. That is also done. So I have the command set that I want to run. You can see them here. I'm already connected to the VM. You can see it there, Jeff at CP1C1. I'm connected and I'm ready to go. Okay, so let me log in as a root user just to make things easy. But I won't even recommend it. Most times it's better you operate as your user and you utilize the sudo command like I placed here for you guys. Okay, but with the root user I can take off the sudo. Okay, so but even if you copy it, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that too. That can also work. Okay, so swap off, we are turning off the swap. So Kubernetes, OpenShift, they don't like you having swap on. Okay, so turn off the swap and comment it out. That's what this last line is for. So I'm going to comment out the swap. It's a set command, it's used for replacing. So if you guys want a full Linux end-to-end course, you can let me know in the comments. I will do that and teach you how, to use all those tricks. So if you look at it, you would see that I did a cat first before I ran it. So you see that the swap file is not commented out. Now after running my set command, you would see that when I tail it, you'd see that truly the swap file has been commented out. So it's a way for me to make sure that the changes you are making are not going to break anything. So all you need to do is just copy and paste the commands and you'll be fine, right? Don't because this the FS tab is very critical. If you go in there and you comment out your root file system, for example, the one above that, it's not going to come up. Okay, so let's add some kernel parameters. So basically, we're creating the container D configuration with the overlay and the net filter. So just go ahead. You really don't need to bother about what all these commands do specifically. I don't want to bore you with all that. Just go ahead and run it. These are requirements on your kernel that Kubernetes would need to run successfully. We're also going to create a kubernetes.conf file that will be used to set up the internal networking for your pods and all that. We're also going to use another file for bootstrapping this, but in the meantime, you can go ahead, just copy it just the way I'm doing it and paste it. So we're going to apply the cctl parameters without a reboot because we're not ready to reboot the whole system yet. Now that that is done, the next thing for us will be to install containerd. Now this keeps changing. So I have multiple steps here to install containerd because this is a living document I maintain, over time. So I'm going to show you both steps. The first one is just to go straight up, do your sudo install containerd, right? It's going to take that from the Ubuntu repository and install it. But if you want to go directly to the Docker repository, then you have to do some extra work. Okay, let me show you this. This won't work at the moment because I don't have the Docker repository set up, so I expect some error. So unable to locate the package containerd.io, right? So that is completely fine and expected. So I'm going to go to the sudo apt install containerd. So you could just do this, you would be fine, and you could move on to the next step, or you could also go ahead with I'll include both steps in the documentation. So for these, I'll have to add the Docker repository for the second step, which I'm going to also do here. It's basically the same thing. So let's let this finish up. Shouldn't take too long. If you have, depends on your internet speed actually. So if it's really good, it wouldn't take too long. So we're done with that. Let me do a little bit of maintenance on this document. Okay. So this will work for you basically if you want to do the quick method. Alright, so for this other method I need to install curl because curl might not be on your Ubuntu machine. So let's install that. Now, after the installation of curl, I need to enable the certificates and set up the repository, and then go ahead to install a Kubernetes version. But right now, well, I'm going to comment this out because these ones are deprecated. I'm going to remove them actually from the documentation later when I'm doing the review of this video. But for now, let's go with the latest. So this is the latest, okay? So we're going to copy this, paste it. Tech is always changing, so you have to keep updating your documentations, trying out things to know if they still work, following various products and looking through their documentation, checking their announcements, their releases, to know what exactly has changed and how that will affect you. So I'm going to run all these commands here at the repository, which will take a little bit of time, not too long. And after that, you update, you do the sudo update, or you could just go ahead to install it. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. We have our repository, and now you would see that yes, containerd.io is now available. So that will take its time to install. So unpacking it, so you can see how I'm interacting with the VM and using Visual Studio Code. This makes your life a whole lot easier. So I'm going to work on the configuration file. Basically zeroizing it, and I'm going to copy what I have in the systemdc group. I'm going to make some changes here using the set command to that file. I'm going to restart my containerd and I'm going to enable it here. So with that, containerd has been set up successfully. Okay, so at this stage of work, when you get here, this is something you're going to do across all your nodes. So the way I'm working here, I'm working on just one node. Now this is a smart way to work because we're going to make clones of this later. Okay, once we see it's working. So but let's go ahead here and set up our Kubernetes. This is really straightforward. Add the Kubernetes repository, create a directory for the key strings. Get your keys. Now carry out an update. Okay, so this is quite important. Do your sudo apt update. So it's going to get you all those repos. It's going to update it. You can say Kubernetes stable version 1.28 and all that. So let's check that we have the ability to install Kubernetes by running the apt cache policy kubelet head-n. So it's going to bring out the first 20 entries for you. So there are a couple of versions here, so we are good to go. Now we're going to install the tools required. All these tools are very important, especially the Kubelet for communication, within the cluster and all that. So very important. I'm going to do a fundamentals video after this, and I'll explain what every element does here. So install the Kubelet, the Kubeadm, and the Kubectl. You can pin down, if you want a certain version, you can set up an environmental variable for the version and point your installation path to that version, right? And install that specific version therefore I would advise whenever you're watching this video, I don't want to pin this down to a very old version and 4 years from the time we created this is no longer valid because of the version, right? So I'm going to leave it at the latest or default version that I'm going to be that's going to be recommended to me by Kubernetes. I'm going to do something. I'm going to hold that version, sudo app mark hold. Now the reason for this is when you have a new version, you don't want that version to change without you knowing, like to update itself without you knowing. Because if in the future I log into the VM and I run a sudo apt update to update everything in my VM, it's going to update my Kubelet, Kubeadm, and Kubectl, and that might not be what I want, right, at that point in time, and something could get broken. So we're going to do what we call mark for hold. So we're going to mark these guys and say, you know what, hold them at this version. If for any reason I want to now upgrade them, I have to take off the hold, then I have to upgrade them. So let's do that, and we're looking good here. And so we're going to check the status of our kubelet. It shouldn't work normally. Yes, this is what we want. So I put it there with no cluster configuration yet. Kubelet will be crash looping, which means it will keep crashing, trying to come up, keep crashing, which is fine. But our container D should be okay. So this is what everybody should have at this point. Container D running, kubelet service in a crash loop. Now if you made it this far, you are awesome. So well done. Well done. So for us, the next steps would be to shut down the virtual machine and actually take another snapshot, because we've reached the milestone, right? We're not deleting the previous snapshot, we're taking a fresh snapshot. Now to shut down, you could use init0. So I'm showing you different ways to shut down, and there are so many ways to shut down a VM. So that has shut that down, and very quickly, I must say. So to take that fresh snapshot, we're gonna call this, we could call it, let's see, snapshot names. Yeah, snapshot name has to be functional. Okay, so we can say we've done an initial setup. Now let's use node ready or node setup.